As we're coming up on the fall festival season, I wanted to shine a light on 10 movies from a variety of genres, countries, and styles that are released in the first half of the year. Ones that are bound to get overshadowed by all the awards players bombarding us here pretty soon. 10 films that I hope aren't lost to time because they're really deserving of your attention. On the surface, Ghostlight has all the markings of a saccharine Sundance indie. It's a film about a construction worker stumbling into a role in a production of Romeo and Juliet while processing the death of his son. A film about the healing power of art, about a fractured family becoming whole once again. But directors Alex Thompson and Kelly O'Sullivan managed to steer the film from such pitfalls, imbuing a rather eye-roll-inducing logline with true nuance and sincerity, only made more truthful by the fact the film's 3 stars are a real-life family. It's a deeply heartfelt, comforting film that, similar to O'Sullivan and Thompson's previous feature, St. Francis, doesn't have many false notes. It earns every single small triumph, every tug at your heartstrings, without ever descending into too schmaltzy of territory. A film of real small and simple but miraculous emotional power that I found to be much more affecting than it initially appeared. Luke Guilford's national anthem is a thoughtful, quietly moving exploration of identity and community set against the backdrop of vibrant western landscapes. The film follows a young man, played by Charlie Plummer, who unexpectedly falls in with a group of queer ranchers and rodeo performers. This is a film with such a hyper-specific perspective that explores a community of people and a subculture I've never seen put to film, nor did I even know existed to this extent. It's just a pure and loving film, devoid of the queer trauma or the urge to insert tragedy that these stories can sometimes be laden with, while also never feeling too cloying. Plus, it's just so beautiful to look at, with nearly every shot of its sun-baked photography feeling like it's torn from a classy fashion magazine. You'll definitely be able to feel the Andrew Haigh, Andrea Arnold, and Chloe Zhao inspiration all throughout this, but its look at masculinity and community still feels wholly unique. I think Luke Guilford is going to be a pretty sought-after director here pretty soon. Spermworld is the first of 2 Lance Oppenheim projects released this year, and it has got to be one of the most outrageous and formally inventive docs I've seen in a long while. Oppenheim is of course known for finding these really eccentric subjects to center his work around, and Spermworld might just be his strangest find yet. Set in the world of unregulated sperm donation, the film follows 3 donors navigating online forums in search of hopeful parents and human connection. What I love most about Oppenheim's docs are how beautifully and inventively shot and edited they are, so formally flashy, free of the emotionally distant objectivity that can be found in many docs today. He uses the cinematic language of a fiction film to turn his subjects almost into characters, to reserve any judgment on them and instead express deep subjectivity in the telling of one story. A true achievement in mining warmth, humor, and discomfort from some of the most vulnerable and intimate scenarios imaginable, with the use of David Lynch's Mulholland Drive that had me absolutely howling. It's available to watch on Hulu, and I couldn't recommend it enough. Prior to Gasoline Rainbow, I was totally unfamiliar with the Ross brothers' work, so the film took me a bit to settle into, and then I realized what I was watching was a blend of documentary and fiction, one so well integrated it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. The film tells the oft-told story of 5 teenagers piling into a van and escaping their small town for a taste of freedom on the empty roads. It's led by 5 first-time actors playing versions of themselves, where nothing ever feels false about this group of young people screaming a song together in a cramped van or drinking beers on the beach, traversing a world that, in this fleeting moment together, feels so wide and full of possibility. It's a Gen Z spin on the road movie that still feels incredibly timeless, for which its foggy distinction between narrative and documentary makes it all the more resonant to me. It is currently streaming on Mubi, so give it a watch if you're in the mood for a nice hangout film that's a pretty easy watch. Crossing is director Lavon Akin's follow-up to one of the most beautiful films from 2019 called And Then We Dance. With that film, Akin crafted a tender and luminous romance, and with Crossing, he's made yet another work of immense sensitivity and realism. The film tells the story of a retired schoolteacher in Georgia who learns her transgender niece has crossed the border into Turkey. She travels into Istanbul in search of her long-lost niece and undergoes a transformative journey along the way. This sounds like a pretty standard searching for a missing loved one movie, but it's Akin's emphasis on character and place that end up yielding such unexpected beauty and insight. The film has this very loose structure, where many threads converge and diverge, where there's less focus on a tight narrative and more on ensuring every inch of the film is imbued with the authentic rhythms of the location, its people, its music. And with subtle grace, we get this tale of searching for a love you pushed away, of the different paths and lives you then wander down and across during that search. It's a film brimming with heart and wonder that deeply understands the healing power of human connection, made even more rousing by a collection of performances and characters that feel so very real, with a standout debut performance from Denise Dunmanley. Crossing is yet another example of Akin taking what very easily could be formulaic material and handling it with such unbridled vibrancy and deep cultural insight that it just leaves you breathless. The film just started streaming on Mubi today, August 30th, so I implore you to give it a spin. Handling the Undead was a Sundance horror entry put out by Neon that felt like it came and went. Reviews were middling at best, and many were let down by the film being the reunion of Renate Reinsve and Anders Danielsen Lee after the much-loved worst person in the world. It's a somber, glacially paced subversion of the zombie film that was quite understandably too sedate for many viewers. It chronicles 3 different narrative strands about people wrestling with grief and the sudden return of their recently deceased loved ones. The film's aesthetic is very gray, the camera's movements dreadfully slow across largely vacuous empty spaces. Director Thea Hivenstal is making a zombie film that's less George Romero and more Lynn Ramsey, that wants you to sit in an oppressively dour atmosphere, enveloping you with a sense of dread not through violence but its aesthetics. It will and has frustrated many, but if this particular speed of genre film is your thing, I think it could play incredibly well for you. Kid Sour's This Closeness is an incisive, micro-budget look into contemporary millennial society, one where the occupations of the 3 leads are an ASMR YouTuber, a journalist, and a gamer. It largely takes place in one apartment, in which a young couple rent out a room in Philadelphia where they've come for a high school reunion. But tensions begin to arise with their co-tenant, an incel-y, overgrown child who just can't help but butt heads with them. Set within the confines of such an enclosed space, Sour is afforded the opportunity to pay minute attention to the little eccentricities of human interaction and behavior. So over the course of its brief runtime, there's this slow breakdown of communication, desire, and social awareness in a way that's equally amusing and discomforting. It's really controlled filmmaking from Sour, only on her sophomore feature, and who's also the lead actress here, in a performance that wields many deep-seated fears and desires. The film is pretty adjacent to American indie mumblecore and the languid, talky inquiry into people's private vulnerabilities, but it still feels pretty fresh and makes Sour a name to look out for in the future for sure. David Hinton's documentary about legendary filmmakers Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger is an absolute feast for any cinephile. Narrated by #1 Red Shoes fan Martin Scorsese, we get more than 2 hours of a master filmmaker piling appreciation on for a collection of some of the greatest movies ever made. Hinton really lets Scorsese just sit back and talk, and there's truly nothing better than that, because I could listen to the man talk about anything for hours. It's a thorough viewing guide to a staggering filmography and inspiring love letter to 2 filmmakers who left such a massive imprint on not only Scorsese, but on many generations of artists that followed. This is a film I never knew I wanted, but am so ecstatic that it exists, as a deep dive into cinematic titans and as an exploration into cinema's power and danger. You don't exactly have to be steeped in their filmography to appreciate this one, but you will be richly rewarded if you go in having some familiarity with some of their heavy hitters. Nathan Silver's movies have never really been my thing. That is until Between the Temples, a neurotic, ultra-Jewish comedy that centers around an unusual, very complicated relationship between a cantor and his new adult student, played by Jason Schwartzman and Carol Kane. It's equally nauseating and tender, with some really hysterical gags and characteristically great 16mm handheld photography from Sean Price Williams. Every interaction at play here is packed with maximal embarrassment and misery. Those excruciating lines and expressions played to perfection by both Schwartzman and Kane. There's a dinner scene in particular here that alone makes Between the Temples worth the watch. So venture out and give this one a shot if you like some anxiety-inducing comedies that make you feel intense secondhand embarrassment for all involved. Daughters is a tremendously powerful documentary from directors Angela Patton and Natalie Ray. The film follows the moments leading up to a daddy-daughter dance, but not just your typical dance, one that will occur at a federal prison. This dance is the culmination to a program called Date with Dad, for which incarcerated men have the opportunity to spend 10 weeks in fatherhood counseling to then be briefly reunited with their daughters. It's a real shame this just got dumped onto Netflix, because this is a profoundly moving and upsetting look into the injustices of the American prison system and the institutionalized racism that it perpetuates. It's not a doc that relies heavily on easy manipulation tactics, but instead just a pure observation of humanity, training a camera on fathers and daughters impacted by the same unjust system, then letting the emotional collateral ensue. It'd make a difficult but profoundly moving double feature with this year's Sing Sing, both films about programs in federal prisons that really serve to uplift and rehabilitate instead of degrade. I shed so many tears, but also let out many laughs. If there had to be one movie to take away from this entire list and watch, make it this one. You surely won't regret it, and don't let it and these other 9 films fall into obscurity, because I think they are all very deserving of your time and your attention.